So as we come closer and closer to the Yom Tov of Shavuos, the time in which we receive the Torah, the greatest gift that Hashem has given us, In the ice? In certain shuls you get ice cream as well, yes. And borscht. But and sprinkles. So we receive the Torah, and we know that one of the prerequisites and one of the inspirations, so to speak, one of the things that brought about Hashem giving us the Torah is the fact that the Jewish people encamped as one at Mount Sinai. Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Hahar, that the Jewish people encamped near the mountain, near Mount Sinai, and our commentators point out that why does it say Vayichan Sham neged Hahar? When it says that they encamped, it says the word in singular, not in plural. Why so? And the Mefarshim point out, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Rashi says, Ki ish echad b'leiv echad. They were truly united, truly as one heart and one mouth. And because of this was one of the reasons, or this was the impetus to bring about the greatest revelation that we have all experienced, all mankind experienced. The fact that Hashem gave us the Ten Commandments, an event that changed the course of history forever. So as we approach this fabulous Yom Tov, and this most significant Yom Tov, of when Hashem gave us the Ten Commandments, when all of Klal Yisrael was standing there at Mount Sinai, for all generations to come, and heard Hashem saying, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am God, your God, and so on and so forth, the experiences before and after, the second giving of the Torah, and so on and so forth. And it all started from the Yom Tov of Shavuos. So I thought that it was appropriate to focus a little bit on this idea of Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, this idea of our relationship with other people, the way we look at other people, the way we evaluate other people, the way we measure other people, as much as we say that we don't. And I want to begin with focusing a little bit on ourselves, because we know that the way we look at another person is very much begins with the way we look at ourselves. The way we look at ourselves is very, very much has a very strong effect on the way we will look at another person. If a person is unhappy with himself, it is impossible that you will be happy with another person. If you only see the negativity and the flaws from within yourself, it is impossible that you'll see something positive in another person. The way we look at ourselves has a very, very strong effect on another person. However, many times people have, whether consciously or subconsciously, have a very strong, a very inflated ego, very strong sense of themselves, and we think very much in terms of what we deserve and what we don't deserve, whether somebody offended us and didn't offend us, whether somebody agrees with us or doesn't agree with us, whether somebody says things highly of us or not highly of us. This comes consciously or subconsciously. That is usually pretty good. And the way we look at another person, naturally, unless a person refines themselves, which is crucial from the perspective of Yiddishkeit, unless a person refines themselves, you usually look at another person as lower than yourself. That's what things usually are. So I want to bring this up not just in the context of Shavuos, though I think that it's very much connected to that, and I think that it would be a very appropriate way of preparing for Shavuos. But this idea is also found and somewhat discussed in this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, in fact, we have two Parshas, Parshas Behar and Parshas Bechukatai. In the Parshas Bechukatai, which speaks about Hashem's statutes, the laws that He gives us, the chukot that He gives us, the chukim. we have a very, very difficult and very, I would say, painful section of the Chumash to read, and that is the section of the hidden blessings. As we know, the Kabbalah and Hasidus explain that this is not, God forbid, Hashem cursing the Jewish people, Hashem destroying the Jewish people, but Kabbalah explains that this is blessings that we just cannot appreciate. But regardless, as we read it as normal human beings, literal interpretation is pretty hard to read it. What happens right after that? So the Torah finishes with the hidden blessings. What happens after that in Chumash? The next portion. It's interesting to point out that at the end of the quote-unquote blessings, or not quote-unquote, hidden blessings, Hashem makes it very clear, all this notwithstanding, even when they're in the land of their enemies, I will not despise them, I will not loathe them, to annihilate them, to break my covenant with them, for I am God, their God. Even after everything, I remain God, their God, I will not despise them, I will not loathe them, and so on. I shall remember for them the covenant of their ancestors, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt in sight of the nations to be a God for them. I am God. These are the statutes, the laws, and the teachings that God set between himself and between Bnei Yisrael on Mount Sinai through the hand of Moshe. So this is basically a closure of this section. Okay, fine, we finished this section. Hashem tells us the curses, and Hashem closes it. Don't get this idea that you might see from TV or other media that Hashem has this vengeful streak, and as soon as you step out of line, poof, is he going to get you? And if you think you're going to outsmart him, he's going to strike you down and find you wherever you are and destroy you, utter destruction. No, Hashem doesn't hate, doesn't loathe. He will never despise them, and so on and so forth. So that's the end of the curses. What happens after that? I think it's quite telling. What would you do if you're writing the Chumash? You have such a heavy, heavy parsha. You have such a heavy section, such a heavy chapter. What comes after that? So I think that it's interesting to point out what Hashem decided to put right after this parak, right after this chapter. So, chapter 26 concludes with the curses. Then what? So let me begin chapter 27. And God spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the Bnei Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people, and say to them, when a person orally expresses a vow pledging valuation of souls to God, in simple English, or my attempt of simple English, that the pasuk goes on to tell us what happens if a person makes a vow that he will give his own value or the value of another person for tzedakah. Very simple, right? So give. What's the problem? How much is he obligated to give?
10%.
10% of what? Of how much he weighs? 10% of his weight in gold. Like how a person says, I give my value for tzedakah. My value. Levi Jacobson says he wakes up one morning and he sees the sun shining. He's so grateful for everything that Hashem has done to him. He says, you know what, Hashem, I pledge to give for tzedakah my value.
Yeah,
what I'm worth.
It depends on age.
Not more than,
There's a cap.
Limit, yes. Not more than 20, I think.
Mm-hmm. So
How
this
do you know
is
your value?
this is a question. So we have to speak to insurance agents who do this for a living. They sit and determine how much a human being is worth. They need it for insurance purposes, for suing purposes, and so on and so forth. So there's a whole industry today of determining how much a person is worth. It depends. You go to different nations, different countries, different continents, different places, right? Many places, many ways, the value of a person is determined based on what he does for a living, or she does for a living. Right? That would be one way that you determine the value of a person. We have a very interesting idea in this week's Parsha. And this begins right after the chapter of the curses. What's the connection? Right? But before we get into questions, let's look at what happens.
It's a hint.
It's a hint that what?
You better pay.
It comes after. But usually after you do something very, very heavy, if you continue with the heavy stuff, you'll lose your reader. It just won't work. If you're writing something, you're writing a play, you're writing a song, or a story, a book, whatever it is, you write something very, very heavy right afterwards, you must make sure to put something light, something more jovial, something inspiring, something uplifting. We get into technicalities immediately over here in the Parsha, right? So what happens? So this is the oaths, and now, if you pledge to give your value for tzedakah, how much does that have to be? And the Torah goes on. The valuation for male shall be from 20 years of age to 60 years of age. Your valuation shall be 50 holy silver shekalim. And so on and so forth. The Torah goes on to describe the value of every person depending on their age and depending on male or female. That's basically what it boils down to. No difference whether your name is Einstein or your name is the Freud, Herzl, Schmerzel. There's no difference who you are, what you are. Just give me your birthday, please.
That's it.
That's all. Rothschild, Gigan, no difference what your name is. No difference what you do for a living. No difference. Torah doesn't care. Torah doesn't care. You've not accomplished anything in your life. You're 99 years old. You'll give just as much as Moshe Rabbeinu. Just as much. You'll be obligated to give just as much as Moshe Rabbeinu if he said the same thing as you.
Same value.
Same value. But how could you compare? How could you compare? What is this all about? So this is really an issue that a lot of the Mefarshim speak about. A lot of the Mefarshim, the commentators on the Torah, deal with this, struggle with this. The Rambam has his interpretation in the Guide for the Perplexed. Considering the perplexity of it, I'll leave it out for now. The Chayza of Lublin, one of the great Hasidic masters, has a very inspiring interpretation to this. He says as follows. It's from the original Hasidic masters, a holy Jew.
What times?
After the Baal Shem Tov, after the Magids. He says, what happens after a person, after he reads the Klalis, after he reads the curses? A person after he reads them. A Jew could start feeling awfully bad about himself. These things didn't happen to me, Baruch Hashem, but do I truly listen to everything Hashem tells me to do? Am I truly living up to my potential? Am I truly living up to my responsibilities as a Jew? Am I truly living up to who I am? A person could feel awfully bad. What is my value? I'm insignificant. And in today's day and age, while people scream and shout about themselves and pound their chests that they're very, very significant and very important, but we know that at the end of the day, psychologists and psychiatrists make a very big living of people that struggle with, what am I worth? Self-esteem, my value. What am I really worth? Am I really worth something to somebody? Unfortunately, people do some very, very tragic things just to be considered a somebody. Right? What is it? But we won't get into the psychology of this, but a person, after reading such a section from Chumash, could feel awfully bad. So we know there's a beautiful story from the from the Mittler Rebbe, that said that he once heard the curses, not in this week's parsha, in a few parshas in a few months. He heard those curses and he fainted, the Torah reading. I asked him, how is it, why is it that you hear it every year, you don't faint, and now you did? So usually the one that read the Torah was his father, the Alter Rebbe. We know, as I said earlier, that according to Kabbalah, these are not curses, these are blessings. but they're revealed in a way of curses. It appears that they're curses, but really they're blessings. So the Mittel Rebbe's answer was, as when their Tata lames, when father reads, it's completely something else. Hert sich nur an brachas. Only brachas are heard, only blessings are heard. Which is a very powerful idea, and the Rebbe speaks about this at length, that when a person realizes that something is coming from from your father, it's not coming from some type of vengeful monster. Something that's coming from your father, you recognize that it's blessings. So this is a very, very deep idea and a very profound idea. And not to take away from that, God forbid, but to see it in a different light. The Chayzem Lublin, the seer from Lublin, said that a person sees such a thing and a person can feel awfully bad. What kind of value do I truly have? I know what I do and what I don't do. I know how dedicated I am and how committed I am to Torah mitzvahs and Yiddishkeit. So for that, the Torah tells us, you're very valuable. You're valuable just for who you are. Just because you are. You're not valuable because you will become something else. You are valuable for who and what you are. This is something that's very, very important. Many, many, many times, and I hear this all the time, if I would be smarter, if I would have spent more time in yeshiva, if I would have been more committed, more sincere, more serious, less arrogant, whatever it is, then I would be valuable. But now it's, I'm a lost cause. Chas v'shalom to say that. Fundamental to Yiddishkeit is that Hashem wants you the way you are, your talents, your abilities, your strengths, your weaknesses. Hashem wants you exactly the way you are, who you are and what you are. It's a very, very powerful idea, a beautiful idea. Now, Abarbanel points out this idea further. The Abarbanel says that when you look at the way the Torah speaks about the value of a person, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't differentiate between a wise person and a foolish person, a tzaddik or a rasha, a talented person, not a talented person. The Torah makes absolutely no differentiation. And therefore, the Torah tells us there's one value. This is to point out to us our true value, the way we look at ourselves. Never to ever look down at ourselves. Never to sell ourselves short, so to speak. To consider ourselves insignificant in one way or another. We have a very, very important contribution to make. Which is why Hashem created us. Every single one of us. Literally every single one of us. And we have to look at the Torah and look at the teachings, the guidance of Torah to educate us, to direct us as to what it is our mission is. A man, a woman, Jew, lahavdil, non-Jew. Every single human being, no matter what age, no matter how young, how old, in modern society, somebody that is older is less significant, somebody is not as healthy is less significant. Yiddishkeit said there's no difference. As long as a person is breathing, they have a particular mission in life. And they have a responsibility and something that Hashem expects from them and wants from them. And that's why Hashem is giving them life at that moment. That's why Hashem is enabling them to breathe, to their heart to pump, for their mind to think, for their bodies to function, in order to fulfill their mission. This is fundamental. But it goes much deeper than that. And as I said, as an introduction to the Shavuos, I think that this is very important. Aside from the fact of the commentators that deal with this question of understanding the value of the way the Torah understands the value of a person, this becomes a very big legal question that the legal authorities, the halachic authorities, the legalists, deal with. Rambam dedicates quite a number of chapters to this. This is discussed in Mishnah at length. There's a tractate of Talmud called Erchin. Evaluations, estimates. How much is something the value of something? Because this is true of a human being. This is also true of an animal. If a person says, I'm going to give the value of my cow, I'm going to give the value of part of my cow, and so on and so forth. What happens if a person says, I'm going to give the value of my heart's lungs? I'm sorry, of my cow's lungs. Do you just weigh the lungs? Or do you say that because lungs can go without a cow, are they part and parcel of the same thing? There are a lot of very intricate legalities that come out of this. I mean, the underlying issue, I digress for a moment, or I'm pausing for a moment, the underlying issue is that we see from this, aside for the idea of the evaluation and so on, we see from this, we understand from this, how significant every single word that we say is. Fine. So I said I'll give my value. I didn't really mean my value. I meant that I'll give a bunch of money for tzedakah. I'll give a nice donation for tzedakah. And the Torah says, no. If you said, I'm going to give my value for tzedakah, now you have to stick to what you said. If you want to give $100 for tzedakah, give $100 or 100 zuzim or dinarim. Say that you're going to give 100 zuzim or dinarim. But if you say that you're going to give the value of this table in silver, so now we have to weigh it, and we have to call professionals to determine what is the exact amount that I'm obligated to give a tzedakah. This is a very, very important element, to actually live up to the precise wording that we use, the choice of words that we use, and the precise pledges that we make, that we say that we're going to give. But as I said, that there's another point to this. There's a tractate of Talmud called Erchin, and quite a complex tractate of Talmud, or from the more complex ones. And when people study, you have questions. As I mentioned many, many times, the only way you don't have a question on something is if you don't study. And the example that I give is my relationship with math. I have absolutely no questions in math. I'll meet Einstein tomorrow, I'll discuss anything with him, many other things, but not math. This doesn't talk to me. I don't read it, I don't study it, we have no communication. We hardly flirt. Not more than that. Once in a while, I'll have a question. Other areas of thoughts, I have questions. I have dilemmas, I have questions, problems, intellectually. So when a person studies something, when you're intimately involved with something, when you care for something, a particular knowledge, you will have questions. If you have no questions on a particular area of knowledge, it is clear. It is a clear indication that you're not immersed in that you don't really have, you're not really involved in that thing, whatever that thing might be. So, as is the nature of people that study Talmud, or as I said, any other subject, in years gone by, not just in years gone by, I'm sorry, I'm making a bunch of disclaimers. I'll just say the story straight. The people that study, when they meet somebody that they believe will have the answers for their questions, they brought their questions forward, and people save their questions. Today, Baruch Hashem, it's very easy to communicate. You have websites and phone numbers and emails and the Shaykh Zagan and communication is beautiful. But a number of years ago, it wasn't that way. You lived in a shtetl somewhere, or even in a big city, and you basically knew who were the learned people, who were the not learned people, although it was always possible that somebody that said he was learned was really not learned, but that you found out. You had a question, you approach a person once, twice, 3 times, you ask them questions, and they don't have the answers, or they don't have satisfactory answers, so you just don't go back to them. Clearly. Simple. So you lived in a place, and you had a question on the Talmud. And you go to your friend, you go to your colleagues, you go to other rabbis or whatever it is, other learned people in the city, and then you ask them and they can't answer you. They don't have an answer for you, or they don't have a satisfactory answer. So what happens then? So these are questions that people saved. When I meet a great Torah scholar, when I'll meet a great Talmud scholar, I'll bring the question before this person. So there's a story with the Alter Rebbe, a very nice story. There was a chassid, there was an individual, he was a Rav of the city of Babroisk. You might have heard of Babroisk? Babroisk, I'm sorry. I apologize. So there was a Rav of the city of Babroisk. Babroisk? Yeah, his name was Rab Hillel. He was referred to as Rab Hillel Paricher. He wrote a sefer on Kabbalah, Chassidus, called Pelach Harimon.
Limonim.
Pelach Harimon. He was a very, very learned man, a great intellectual. And more than that, he was a man that served Hashem with sincerity. So two different things. A person could be very learned, but go along for the ride, the intellectual stimulation, and not really serve Hashem. Rabbi Hillel was known as an individual that served Hashem with sincerity, with devotion, dedication, a true Jew. He had a question, and he heard of the greatness of the Alter Rebbe. He had a particular, very difficult question. Something was bothering him in the tractate of Talmud. I'm sorry, in the Talmud tractate of Erchim, evaluations. He had a disturbing problem, and he heard that the Alter Rebbe was this great genius, so he wanted to bring this question before the Alter Rebbe. But quote unquote, fate would have it that whenever he came to a city where he heard that, and he was literally going after the Alter Rebbe to try to come to the Alter Rebbe, but when he came to a city, when he heard that the Alter Rebbe is in a particular city, by the time he came to that city, the Alter Rebbe had left already. Once, twice, 3 times, it happened a number of times, but he wasn't going to give up. So he decided that as soon as he hears that the Alter Rebbe is coming to a certain city, he's not going to wait. He's going to come to that city before the Alter Rebbe gets there. And so he did. The Alter Rebbe used to travel around sometimes. He did that. He heard that the Alter Rebbe was coming to a particular city. He wasn't going to stay there for too long, but he was coming to that city. So he'll go there right away. Before the Alter Rebbe got there, he asked the Chassidim or whoever was looking after the Alter Rebbe's accommodations, where's the Alter Rebbe going to be staying? He told them this time he was going to get his question asked. Where's the Alter Rebbe going to be staying? And this in his house. He went to that house and he hid under the bed. He went to the bedroom, he hid under the bed. And his plan was, the Alter Rebbe will come, he'll go out from under the bed, and he'll finally get to meet the Alter Rebbe and to ask the Alter Rebbe this dilemma, this Talmudic problem that he had, to get an answer for this Talmudic dilemma that he had. Sure enough, he's lying there under the bed, and sure enough, he hears the commotion, and the Alter Rebbe is arriving. The Alter Rebbe walks into the room, and before he has a chance to move, the Alter Rebbe says that when a young man has a question in evaluation, the tractate of evaluation, he first must evaluate himself. That's what the Alter Rebbe says out loud. He said it in Yiddish. The Alter Rebbe had a certain tune when he used to say these messages. So the Alter Rebbe said it in this famous tune as when a person has a question in evaluation, he first must evaluate himself. Rabbi Hillel fainted upon hearing these words. And by the time he came to, he climbed out from under the bed, the Alter Rebbe was gone. He ended up going to the second Rebbe, to the Mittel Rebbe, then to the Samach Tzedek. He was a great chassid. He was a very, very special. He was one of the most illustrious chassidim. So what is the story exactly? And I think that this is very, very much connected to the idea of what we're talking about, the evaluation of oneself and the way we approach the Yom Tov of Shavuos. We point out, the Mefarshim point out, as the Abarbanel points out, that what's the reason that the Torah only gives us one value per age, per group of people, for male, for female? The person is only evaluated according to age, that's all. Why so? Because there's a common denominator. There's a common thread. There's a common value that every single person has. Quite naturally, as I said earlier, we look at ourselves as somewhat better off than people next to us. We're smarter, we're kinder, we're more sensitive. We think of ourselves usually higher than what we actually might deserve. And quite naturally, when we look at another person, usually it'll be slightly less than what they actually deserve. We will evaluate the other person less with more strict criteria, with more, we will not be so liberal in what we give them credit for. Says the Alter Rebbe to Reb Hillel, and this is really a message for all of us. When you come to evaluate something, first evaluate yourself. You have to first and foremost truly ask yourself, am I living up to who I'm supposed to be? Am I truly being a child of Hashem? Do I realize that my true value is the neshama that Hashem has given me? That this is my true value, because if that is my true value, then anybody with a neshama has the same value as I. Everybody with a neshama, any person is a child of Hashem. Every single human being is a creation of Hashem. A fellow Jew has a unique relationship with Hashem, regardless of what they did or what they didn't do, regardless of what they studied in the past and what they didn't study in the past. We are all one and the same. This is pointed out in this week's Parsha. This is pointed out as our forefathers stood before Mount Sinai. This is one of the fundamentals of Yiddishkeit. To recognize that Hashem is our Father and we all are His children. When we do so, when we recognize this, we are truly able to evaluate ourselves. We're truly able to live up to who we are and to what we are. And we're truly able to appreciate those that are around us with honesty. We are able to appreciate those that are around us for who they truly are. We're able to live in unison, in love, and in unity with those that are around us, which brings about the greatest blessings from Hashem. May we all be blessed, every single one of us, with the greatest blessings from Hashem in the most revealed, practical way. Happy blessings, healthy blessings in the most revealed way. With the coming of Mashiach, the greatest blessing of all, may it happen now. Thank you.